Hi everyone, it's Juliet Highland again, and I am here today to read you the meet cute for Tessa and Gabe, who are my hero and my heroine in the Pediatrician's twin Bombshell. This is one of my favorite covers. I love this yellow that she has in the baby bump. It's not really a twin baby bump, but super cute anyways. So this is the meet cute for Tessa and Gabe. This book is set in Texas. It's actually set in my hometown. So Dr. Tessa Garcia leaned against the bar and slid the back of her heel out of the 4-inch peep-toe shoes she'd crammed her feet into. These shoes had been uncomfortable when she'd purchased them 3 years ago, but she didn't remember them being such torture devices. What had possessed her to wear them? The same ridiculous urge that had driven her to give in to Lily's plea that she come tonight. Tessa had hoped this outing might stem the loneliness that clouded her when she collapsed into bed, at least for an hour. She should have known better, but she'd wanted to believe she might still have a place with these people, that she wasn't completely alone. Tessa glared at the martini sign hanging from the bar. The former dive bar had been revamped over the last year. Pathetic-looking, burned-out neon signs were now upscale artwork. But the worn bar and exposed brick walls were still the same, likely a design aesthetic Tessa didn't understand, or maybe the new owners had run out of money during their revitalization effort. Revitalization. Tessa hated that word. Out with the old and in with the new. The phrase applied to people too, apparently. A cackle went up from the patio, and Tessa hated the heat coating her cheeks. She didn't belong here now. This had always been Max's place, his social circle, his night to shine. She'd been a girlfriend and then a wife, but never a friend. That realization sent more regret washing through her. They'd divorced a little over a year ago, though they'd inhabited the realm of uncomfortable roommates instead of spouses for far too long. She and Max might not have been able to save their union, but she hadn't thought the woman she'd considered friends would also be casualties of that failed relationship. But they were all married to Max's college buddies. God, Tessa wanted to slap herself. She should have been smart enough to make the connection. Maybe she'd spoken to anyone outside the hospital in the last month besides food delivery people. Tessa's eyes looked to the ceiling as her foolishness washed over her again. The people in the corner had all stared when she'd popped in, the press of pity in their gaze as they tried to pretend it was fine that she'd stopped by. Even Lily's bright exclamations hadn't been able to cover the pink on her cheeks as her eyes darted between Tessa and her ex-husband's new bride. Her divorce had been easy, at least on paper. Her lawyer had called it textbook. She and Max had divided their savings account, sold the starter home they purchased, and said goodbye to their shared lives. It was the after that had rocked her. In all her failed attempts to make him happy, Max's hobbies and dreams had taken precedent. When she'd suggested hiking or visiting the botanical gardens or even hanging out in the backyard where she'd cultivated a relaxing green space, he'd balked. He'd point out that she was always asking him to do more than his share of things, that she should want to do what he wanted since he was handling everything at home so she could advance at the hospital. That hadn't been the full truth. He'd done slightly more than half the chores and complained every step of the way. But she'd given in every time. That still rankled. Her father hadn't appreciated being asked to do anything for his family either. Tessa's mother had always made excuses, just like Tessa had for Max. Tessa had watched her mom try everything to hold on to her marriage, then she'd watched the catastrophic aftermath. She'd witnessed all of it, and rather than protecting herself, Tessa had given in to a man's desires too, hoping that by ceding her likes, her friends, her dreams, Max might look at her like he had when they first started dating, hoping that she could have the happy family she'd always craved. At least she had a thriving career as a pediatric attending at Dallas Children's Hospital. Her ex-husband hadn't been able to strip that from her, though he'd stolen the promotion they'd offered her at Cincinnati Children's. Maybe Tessa should have moved without him, but hadn't been willing to admit what deep down she'd already known. Her marriage had been over long before they'd finalized the divorce decree. She put so much of herself aside for Max, and what did she have? A closet full of colorful scrubs and comfy shoes, and no one to grab drinks with, no one to see a movie or go to the botanical garden with, no one at the other end of her phone, and no senior attending position. Hell, she'd even given up the garden she'd cultivated so carefully because Max had wanted to sell their home. Instead of fighting or making a sound argument for why she should purchase it, Tessa had just consented up to the sale. Her townhome didn't have a lot of extra space for a garden. Tessa harumphed as she spun the ice around in her cup. She'd been so focused on finding a spot close to work and away from her ex that she'd rushed the purchase. But she had her independence, and she would never let a man dictate her path again. I didn't think Max and Stephanie were coming. Lily's cheeks were red as she fanned herself and waited for another drink. I swear, she's barely old enough to be in here. Lily dramatically rolled her eyes to the ceiling as she leaned against the bar. Mm-hmm. Tessa kept her gaze focused on the ice melting in the glass that once held club soda. Lily might not be drunk yet, but the wife of her ex-husband's oldest friend was tipsy enough to repeat anything Tessa might say. At least the bubbly blonde had interrupted Tessa's pity party. It was nice to see you. Guess I probably shouldn't. She bit back the last part of that sentence, but Tessa had no problems filling it in. This would be the last time she was invited. A martini appeared in front of them, and Lily sighed. If I hear one more word about college sports. Her first sip almost emptied the fancy glass. She laid her hand on Tessa's arm, then flounced back to the patio. College athletics might not be interesting, but apparently neither was spending time with an ex-wife who didn't know her place. Lily clearly regretted the multiple texts she'd sent begging Tessa to show up tonight. Not that it really mattered. Over the years, girlfriends had come and gone, and now she was the first wife who was being booted from the group. It was past time for her to go home. Those heels look like hell. She sighed. Flirting in a bar had never been her scene, but flirting in a bar where her ex-husband and all his friends were drinking felt like an extra level of desperate. She was not desperate. Lonely, but not desperate. Never desperate. I've already asked for the check, and I'm going home to get out of these torture devices. Her tongue froze as she met the honey eyes next to her. God, he was gorgeous. His dark hair was trimmed, but a bit of a 5 o'clock shadow accentuated his firm jaw. His arms were muscular without looking like all he did was grunt in front of a gym mirror and drop weights on the floor. Clearing her throat, she held up her empty glass and tried to push the unexpected arousal away. The man before her was extraordinary. Just let me strike out. Then I can tell my sister I tried and go home myself. He winked before waving over her shoulder. If you want to throw the ice in my face to make it look really convincing, she will definitely let me off the hook. Tessa laughed and had to stop herself from leaning closer. I've never thrown anything in someone's face, but now I kind of want to. The option stands. 2 dimples appeared in the Adonis's cheeks, but if you keep laughing, it won't be believable. Though, I wouldn't complain. Even with the air conditioning, this place still feels like an outer ring of... He caught the last word, and Tessa beamed. Not from Texas, then. The question slipped between them, and she gripped her glass. She hadn't meant to drag out this encounter, but she suddenly didn't want it to end. She really needed to make some new friends. Or set up a dating profile on one of the apps the single medical professionals were always discussing. No, she was not interested in that. But what was an extra 5 minutes in this hellhole if it was with the dreamboat before? At least he'd give her something delicious to think about in her lonely bed tonight. Originally, yes, but I've been out of the state for years. I forgot how hot it was in Dallas in June. He leaned over her shoulder, then shook his head. She just gave me a thumbs up. Ah, well, I can still tell her you told me to take a hike in a few minutes. I'm Gabe. Gabe? The subtle shift in his voice tickled the back of her brain. Her gaze wandered from his chiseled cheeks, and the bite of recognition stole through her. It couldn't be. Gabe Davis? Tessa blinked as she tried to reconcile the stunning hunk before her with the teenager who'd spent a summer working with her in the Tinseltown Theater. The honey eyes and smile were the same, and her mood lightened even further as he tilted his head and raised an eyebrow. He'd been cute then, and most of the staff had swooned over him. Tessa had too. They'd even shared an impromptu kiss late one night. Then he disappeared. She gave her best fake smile. You forgot to tell me you'd like extra butter layered on your popcorn. Of course it's not too much trouble to get you a fresh one. Tessa Garcia! Gabe's deep chuckle rumbled through her, and this time Tessa didn't stop herself as she leaned closer. I heard you left Texas. I assume it was someplace cooler given your hatred of this lovely June evening. She bit the inside of her cheek as that piece of information floated out. She hadn't gone looking for him. Not really. He'd been a recommended friend on social media, and she'd clicked on his profile once, just for nostalgia's sake. There'd been a picture of a lot of snow and a notice that he only shared his information with friends. She'd almost pushed the bright blue request button, but she'd resisted, barely. I was in Maine, just moved back. A shadow passed over Gabe's eyes as he signaled for the bartender, but it disappeared quickly. If she had something other than club soda in her glass, she might be able to pretend the haunted gaze had never existed. But she was at the bar, avoiding her ex-husband and his friends. Who was she to pass judgment? My dogs are having fun downstairs. Sorry, guys. Can I get a Coke? And he turned to Tessa. Are you a drink for saving me from my sister's matchmaking schemes? Club soda with lime. Tessa pursed her lips as the barkeep barely kept the smile on his face. She'd worked in a bar through college and knew their tab wasn't enough to keep the great service coming. Still, she laid some extra on the counter as he put 2 cups in front of them to cover the first club soda. The man's shoulders relaxed a little and he added an extra line before passing them the drinks. If you're up for it, why don't we see if there's any seats on the patio? Get you off those dastardly high heels. My ex-husband is back there with his new wife. The words slipped from her lips and Tessa could have throttled herself. The last person she wanted to talk about was her ex, but she also didn't want to sit back there talking to Gabe while all the people she thought were her friends either ignored her or studied this interaction. I really was getting ready to leave when you walked out. That wasn't a lie. She raised the drink to her lips, enjoying the bubbles tickling her nose. Pathetic. I know. Nope. Gabe shook his head. Plus, this saves me from having to politely pretend I'm not sweltering back there while we nurse our non-alcoholic beverages and try to figure out how long we have to play catch-up. He tilted his glass toward her, and his dimples sent another rush down her back. Pressing her fingers to her lips, she shook her head. How did this man make her swoon just a few minutes of conversation? What if I want to catch up? The question surprised her, but it was the sincerity behind it that nearly made her knees buckle. And that is the meet cute for the Pediatrician's Twin Bombshell. This one is out. You can get it in ebook format from any of your favorite ebook retailers. So I hope you enjoy. I had a lot of fun writing this one. It really is set in my hometown, and I put Gabe and Tessa as people that were at the rival high schools. So my high school is even mentioned in this one. So enjoy. Bye.